In this example, I'm going to show you how to find the inverse function when you're given the equation of a function. So first thing off the bat, make sure your function is 1-to-1 before you proceed. If your function is not 1-to-1, then this is pointless. So I have already verified that this function is 1-to-1 on its domain. And its domain is all real numbers, excluding 1. So that means my efforts will not be wasted in finding an inverse function. So there is a 4-step process you can follow to find the inverse function when you're given an equation. The first step of that process is to replace the function notation with a variable, and I'm going to choose y. Okay. Since my input variable is x, do not choose x, choose any other letter. I'll choose y. This is just rewriting the equation to make things a little easier. The second step is to interchange x and y. If you watched how to find the inverse function from a graph, you can see we do the same thing with graphs. Because inverse functions change the role of the range and the domain, we need to swap the variables that represent range values and domain values. So in my equation, I will swap the roles of x and y as such. And then what we need to do is rewrite this equation so that it says y equals a function of x. So what I'm going to do is solve for y. And this is where you'll spend most of your time on this problem, is right here in step 3. So in order to solve this equation right here for y, I would love to eliminate this fraction right here. So remember that fractions are just shorthand notation for division. And the way to get rid of division is to multiply. So I'm going to take this equation right here and multiply both sides by y minus 1. And what that will do is eliminate the fraction. So now this is a lot easier to work with. So again, I want to solve for y. So I think what I'll do, okay, so I'm going to distribute this x right here. I'm going to collect the terms with a y on one side of this equation and the terms without a y on the other side. So I'm going to subtract 2y from both sides and then add x. So I've collected all the y terms on one side of the equation and all the terms without a y on the other side. And now this is really nice because I can factor out a y. Now there's one thing left to do to solve for this variable y, and that's to divide by x minus 2. Now, I mentioned that there were 4 steps, and we just completed step 3. So step 4 is to rewrite this equation using inverse function notation. And since my original function was named f, this will be named f inverse. Now, you can easily see there's one place where this function is going to be undefined, and that's at x equals 2. So just to summarize this problem really quickly, there's a 4-step process for finding an inverse function from an equation. The first 2 steps are some housekeeping, replacing a variable, then swapping your variables. You're going to spend most of the time in step 3. You want to solve for y. so that you can present this function as a function of x. But remember in the end that that function is an inverse function, so make sure you use inverse function notation.